All right, and welcome in everybody. Hope you're having a fantastic, fantabulous, awesome freaking day. My name is Garrett Shumake, and you are listening to the Shumake Take, and welcome in to Predictions versus Reality, the show where we talk about every team, talk about where I thought they would be, and where they actually ended up. For those of you that know what Predictions versus Reality is all about, you can go ahead and jump to the timestamp below right now. For those of you that do not know what this show or what this series is all about, I made scheduled prediction videos predicting every single record for every team back in August before the 2024 season started. And so now we're going to look back at why I had them going, the record I said I had them going, and then we're going to look at where they actually ended up. Did they finish better? Did they finish worse? Did they finish around the same record, right? Did I get a couple records predictions right? Well, spoiler alert, yes, I did. I got 3 of them right, and one of them I actually predicted correctly was the Green Bay Packers, which if you want to go check that video out, go ahead and check it right now. I'm going to throw a card up there. Yeah, that's a card, right? Yeah, I'm going to throw a card up there so you can guys check that out. And also, I have videos for the rest of the NFC South with the Carolina Panthers, the Falcons, the Bucks, all the NFC North. So I already mentioned the Packers, Vikings, Bears, Lions, all those videos are up. And also make sure to check out the Shumake Take Awards. I'll make sure to mention that again at the end of the show. But back to case in point. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about the last place team in the NFC South, which was the New Orleans Saints. So going right into it, where did I have the New Orleans Saints in August? Well, in August, I projected them to finish 6-11, and I had them going that way because I thought this roster wasn't great, but also they really didn't do much to improve it. Sure, they did bring in Willie Gay, they brought in Chase Young, brought in these guys to help bolster their defense, but they were kind of underwhelming. That's kind of those are the big highlights of what they did. They really didn't do that much in free agency, which we'll talk about why here at the end of the show. But also at the same time, their draft, which is good at the top, their back end at the time saw barely any time on the field, which they needed since they didn't do anything in free agency to build the team. And then looking at the rest of the division at the time, I thought that Carolina would make a jump, and I thought that Tampa Bay and Atlanta would be in the playoff hunt. So that kind of left New Orleans in the dust, and they ended up getting left in the dust. Mostly the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers, sure, they finished with the same record, but yeah, they definitely finished the year a lot better than the New Orleans Saints did. But what actually happened? Well, they finished one game below what I had them projected. They finished 5-12. Their offense ranked 21st, and their defense ranked 30th, and their 3 best wins to me were Week 1 versus Carolina, 47-10, Week 2 against Dallas, 44-19, and then later on in the year they beat Cleveland 35-14. So 3 out of their 5 wins were dominant wins. The other 2 were really close against bad football teams, and then and the rest of the 12 losses were just disappointing. They were disappointing, or they were just straight garbage blowouts that they had no time being in. So the team really wasn't all that competitive. And going into the end of last year, in those final games, I did mention how they were a little bit more competitive, but honestly, looking back in retrospect, they were, but in reality, they had no head coach. They weren't going anywhere. Realistically, they were not going anywhere. And after the season's done, looking back on it, yeah, they're honestly no closer than they were last year. They're literally nowhere. They've went absolutely nowhere. And so what happened? What happened with the New Orleans Saints that caused them to caused them to end up where they ended up? The thing was, everything I believed in mostly came true. There was a moment where I thought I was wrong after week 2. I mentioned this. They had just blown out Carolina. They had just blown out Dallas. Dropped 40-plus points in back-to-back games. And it looked like, okay, this team might actually be a surpriser. This might be an early omen of, okay, we got another team in the NFC South that's ready to compete. Like, we got Tampa, Atlanta, New Orleans. Okay, and at the time I thought Carolina would step up, but obviously at this point they got destroyed in their first 2 games, so everyone was like, oh, same old Panthers, so people already written them off. So New Orleans was like, okay, here we go. We got a 3rd team here competing for the division. Let's do it. Let's see some chaos in here. The NFC South has been a perpetually bad division for years. I can't remember the last time we've actually seen 3 teams in the division actually be competing for the playoffs, and so I thought that could be a possibility. And then After the next 7 games, which were all 7 straight losses, Dennis Allen was fired, and the year was, at that point, declared over. When you fire your head coach, your year is over. After 7 straight losses, it makes sense why Dennis Allen was fired. And at that point, they just tried to scrap together a couple wins. They tried to play and tried to fight for something, but everyone knew that they weren't fighting for anything. And this team did have some bright spots. Alvin Kamara obviously was good once again. Marquez Valdes-Scantling came on there. He was signed to the Saints with 5 games to go, 5 games to go, and played pretty well, right, after he bounced around. And then the second-year defensive tackle, Brian Brzee out of Clemson, he improved a little bit, improved his sack totals. And then rookies Talise Fuaga, the tackle out of Oregon State University, and then Kool-Aid McKinstry, the corner out of Alabama. Their second-round pick showed a lot of promise, but it wasn't enough to overcome the rest of the slop that this team was. So what went wrong? What went wrong? What actually caused, let's go into the nuance of what actually caused the Saints season to fall in utter disaster. Well, the first one was straight up injuries on offense killed them. Chris Olave, their top receiver, he went down, done for the year. Rashid Shaheed, not too long after him, went down, boom, done for the year. Taysom Hill, their Swiss Army knife player, boom, he went down, done for the year, and he's probably going to be free agent. Doesn't look like they're going to bring him back. So that's unfortunate, and this forces passing game to use more tight ends, which Foster Moreau and Jawan Johnson aren't starting level tight ends in the NFL. They're okay receivers, they're decent blockers, but they are not starting level tight ends. So they had to use them though, because their receiver depth was also garbage. So there you go. You have no weapons on offense other than Alvin Kamara. And this ended up creating a revolving door at the offensive skill position area. And then injuries to Marshawn Lattimore, who ended up getting traded, hurt their ability in the secondary. Free agency pickups Ugo Amadi did create a revolving door at corner because he wasn't that good, which also weighed this defense down. The most notable things were Alontae Taylor and Kool-Aid McKinstry, who were fine, but compared to everything else around it, there's literally nothing they could do. The entire rest of this defense was god-awful. And coaching was the next thing. It just straight up sucked. It just straight up was garbage. I don't know why they decided to keep Dennis Allen. I was one of those guys. I was like, okay, nah, you should have fired him after 2023. Just like Chicago and Matt Eberflus, he should have been fired then and there. I know that you hired him to be the next head coach because he was with John Payton for so long. You want to try and keep that continuity. I get it. I really, really do. But no, after that first year, he should have been canned. He should have been fired. He should have been out of there, right? At that point, it was clear that the quality in coaching from Peyton to Allen was night and day. Night and complete day there. Okay, you know what? I just decided to make a cut. I kind of talked myself into a wall, and I didn't feel like restarting. So here we are. We're back to continuing it. But honestly, Dennis Allen deserved to be fired. And the thing is, you want to know how bad he was as a coach? You don't start as hot as you did those first 2 weeks of the year and then lose 7 straight. That's just terrible. What the difference between the week 2 New Orleans Saints and the week 9 New Orleans Saints, the ability of coaching from Sean Payton to Dennis Allen was night and day. These two teams did not look the same at all. They did not look the same, not even one bit. Only a couple players, sure, we're still playing well, like I mentioned, but that was it. This team from week 2 to week 9 was completely different. And by week 9, this team was absolute garbage. They were absolute garbage. They were not closing games right. They were getting blown out in games. And of course, the injuries, like I mentioned, didn't help. But I mean, come on. At some point, if you're on a 7-game losing streak, that's just not injuries. No, I'm not going to blame injuries on a 7-game losing streak. Your team is just bad. Coaching is just bad. And there's a reason why Dennis Allen was fired is because you cannot go on a 7-game losing streak after starting as hot as you did the first 2 weeks. You simply can't. So that was another thing. The third one was the run defense was just straight up awful. They finished 31st overall, 141 yards per game. And honestly, when you have an aging veteran in Cameron Jordan, Nathan Shepard, Brian Brzee, and Chase Young, all these guys are more pass rush oriented players. Brian Brzee was drafted because of his pass rushing ability. Chase Young was more known as a pass rusher coming out of Ohio State, and throughout his entire NFL career, he was used as like a rotational third down rusher because that's where he was at his best. And then Nathan Shepard, same way. He's more of a pass rusher. He's not a run stuffer. And at the same time, they were also 20th in sacks. So their pass rush, which is where they were strong at, wasn't even that good anyways. So it's like, oh, here we go. This entire defensive line is just completely underwhelmed. Chase Young is going to be a free agent. Nathan Shepard, I don't know what they're going to do with him. Kalen Saunders was their run-stuffing nose tackle type of guy, but you're going to need more than just a nose tackle to stop the run in the NFL, especially now after the year that the running backs had. So there's that. And also, they just have multiple holes. Guard, elite skill position players other than Chris Olave. Quarterback is now a bigger issue than it was when I wrote this script because Derek Carr could be gone and he's not going to take a pay cut. So what are you going to do there, right? They just need a lot of players. They need a lot of help in a lot of different spots. And unfortunately, I don't think that's going to come for a very long time. So what do the Saints do now? What do the Saints do now? Well, for me, the three biggest needs that they have are edge, wide receiver, and quarterback. Edge rusher, obviously, Cam Jordan is aging. He's going to retire in a year or two. So you need to draft a guy to replace his production. I don't know if you can do that, but you're going to need a guy that can step in with after Cam Jordan leaves so you can actually get a pass rush, right? Brian Brzee is going to need to step up as well. Kalen Saunders and Nathan Shepard, all those guys are going to need to step up. I don't think you can draft a defensive tackle. You could. One of those guys might be a free agent. I don't know. Brian Brzee, I know, is not. He's a second-round pick. He's in like year 2 or year 3. But you need an edge rusher to get a good pass rush and just get some youth in that position because Cameron Jordan is old and aging. The second one is wide receiver. Chris Olave is good, but he can't stay healthy. Rashid Shaheed, he's a good wide receiver too, but he's not a wide receiver 1. And then the depth on the back end is straight garbage. Dante Pettis is good. Marquez Valdes-Scantling was good. But honestly, are those guys you really want thrusted into a starting role if you have receivers that go down? No, you really don't. So you need to draft a receiver at least day 1, maybe not. You really need to get an edge rusher there. But day 2, get one. You really need to try and get one if the value is right and the player is right. I mean, they need more at the receiver position. Also, with Taysom Hill leaving, they're going to need another weapon there. Honestly, even if they don't go receiver, even if they go tight end, like a guy like Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green could fall into the second round. If he's there, take him. He's talented, right? Guys like Colson Loveland out of Michigan, he's probably going to be going in the first round. But there is buzz that he could drop to the second because of his injury, although he was medically cleared to be ready for training camp. So I don't know how much that affects it, but it could. It really could. So that's something you could look there for too, considering that the tight ends for the Raiders, for the Saints aren't good enough. They're not starting quality. And then quarterback, what do you do there? If Derek Carr decides to leave, which you're probably going to have to cut him and eat the money because he's not going to take a pay cut. And quite frankly, you can't afford to keep him. The Saints, if you look right now, they have negative $51 million in cap space. That's by far the worst in the NFL. And we're going to talk more about it in a second. But you just can't afford to keep Derek Carr. You can't. You simply can't. If he's not going to take a pay cut, you got to get rid of him. And what does that mean? You're not going to be in a position to draft one of the top quarterbacks. So do you start Spencer Rattler? Right? Spencer Rattler, he only had 1,317 yards, 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and only completed 50% of his passes. He was not good as a rookie. He had a couple good moments, but nothing great. Nothing great at all. Nothing very promising. So what do you do then? Do you draft a guy like Quinn Ewers? Do you take a chance on him? Do you draft Will Howard of Ohio State? Do you take a flyer on like Riley Leonard, Kyle McCord in the 7th? Like, what do you do? Like, what do you do at quarterback legitimately? And quite frankly, in my opinion, you either got to keep Spencer Rattler or you draft one of these guys in the later rounds and start him and see what he's got. Like Aiden O'Connell and the Raiders. So there, if you want another link, there you go. So maybe that, right? But those 3 positions are the thing. Those are the 3 big needs. And then they hired Kellen Moore to be their head coach. I like the move considering where the Eagles were last year. They won the Super Bowl, of course. So there's that. And then you hire Brandon Staley to be a defensive coordinator. Another defensive coordinator hire that people are like, oh, he's a bad coach. No, if you remember when Brandon Staley was the defensive coordinator, They had one of the best defenses in the NFL when they won the Super Bowl in 2021. He was the forefront of that group, of that unit. He coached that unit, right? So as a defensive mind, as a coordinator, I think it's a good fit. But at the same time, these two coaches have coached together before. 2023 in in LA with the Chargers. And what happened? They won 5 games. So does the coaching duo really work? I don't know. On paper, it sounds good. But in practice, these guys have been in these similar situations. They've been coaching together before, and it did not work out. So that'll be interesting to see. But ultimately, in my opinion, no matter what moves they make, no matter who they cut, who they restructure, which they're going to have to do with their cap space, honestly, it's not going to matter. And I'll tell you right now, this team is not going to win more than 6 games in 2025, no matter what they do. Because GM Mickey Loomis is the problem. He is the one big problem in New Orleans, and he needs to be fired. And I mean fired immediately. I don't know how many people agree with this take that I'm about to share with you, but Mickey Loomis has single-handedly driven this team into the ground. He's paid for players, and when the bill came due and they didn't have cap space, restructure and kick the money down the can, or kick the can down the road. He just kept on continuing backloading money over and over and over and over again for years to try and continue to field a competitive team instead of just tearing it down and accepting, okay, Drew Brees is retired, we need to go in a new direction, let's rebuild. No, he chose not to do that, and now they're in this cap situation where they have to constantly restructure and cut players just to get to the surface, just to breathe. And then that's not including being able to spend money for other free agents. The cap situation is so bad in New Orleans that they just have so much debt. It's like being in credit card debt. If you're in credit card debt, you got to pay off that credit card first before you make a big purchase somewhere else, because your debt is more important. And for the Saints, they need to fire Mickey Loomis and just eat their medicine for the next 3 or 4 years and field perpetually awful teams until they can get their heads above water and actually get this cap situation correct. Because until they do that, it's going to be the same issue every single year until Mickey Loomis is fired and they decide, okay, we need to finally just give it up. He has literally ran this team into a wall where they can't get good. They can't be good anymore. Why? Even if they draft good players, even if they do, guess what? They're going to have to walk because you're not going to be able to afford to pay them because you're already so far under the water in debt that you can't afford it. You simply can't afford it. And again, if I'm the New Orleans Saints, you need to fire Mickey Loomis immediately and just eat your medicine and take the next 3 or 4 years, just draft players, right? And just, sign really cheap free agents here and there and really just try and flesh out your roster as much as you can in that situation. You really can't, but you got to try. And if a player pops off, well, guess what? They're going to have to walk because you can't pay them. You got to get out of this cap situation. And honestly, it's going to take 2, 3, 4 years of sacrificing success at all in order to get out of that situation. And it's tough because what do? The fans aren't going to support you. They're not going to support a team perpetually losing and being an awful 5-win team at max. They're not going to support that. And the players, you're good luck getting free agents. They're not going to want to come here. They're not going to want to come to New Orleans if they're perpetually bad. So it's a lose-lose situation. But quite frankly, if you want to get out of your salary cap situation, you're going to have to do something. Because kicking the can down the road over and over again and constantly restructuring contracts and paying this dead cap, you can't afford to do it any longer. The Saints need to fire Mickey Loomis now and get themselves out of the situation while they still can, or they're going to continue being a perpetual 5-win team for the next decade if they don't fire him. Genuinely, this team cannot get any better. And anytime they do get better, they're not going to be able to supplement to continue improving because they're not going to have the money to do it. They need to get out of debt immediately. But with that being said, that is going to do it for me today, guys. I know it's a little bit of a shorter episode. I'm going to focus on keeping these more concise and clear as much as I can. That way I don't extend them to be super duper long and overstuffed, overinflated, right? So that'll do it for predictions versus reality today. Make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I want to see what your guys' opinions are, especially on the cap situation for the New Orleans Saints. Also, make sure to leave a like and hit the subscribe button. Hitting those two buttons only takes a couple of seconds, and it helps me out tremendously in helping me grow my platform and continuing to spread my passion for football with more and more people. Also, make sure to share the video, whether you're spreading by word of mouth or sharing on social media. Make sure that you can get everybody locked in and locked on to the Shumake Take podcast. If you want to become a Shumake Take fan, become a Shumake Take fan and do all these things and help a guy out, alrighty? But that is going to do it for me today, guys. Make sure you check out all the other videos that I have for Predictions versus Reality, and also check out the Shumake Take Awards. Shumake Take Awards are up. I would really appreciate it if you guys check that out and watch it all the way through. But that is going to do it for me today, guys, officially. Hopefully, the Saints can get this better. I don't think they will, but we will just have to see. I will see you guys for Carolina Panthers. Go check it out right after this. I'll see you guys next time.